the Aegean Sea, calm, glittering, and timeless. In the 5th century BCE, these waters are ruled by triremes of wood and bronze, vessels powered by the sweat of oarsmen and the skill of ancient sailors. Empires rise and fall across these shores. Athens and Sparta prepare for wars that will shape the destiny of Greece. To the men of this age, the sea is the stage of honor, of survival, of conquest. But imagine, on a morning where the horizon should hold nothing but sails and sun, an impossible sight emerges. A vast steel colossus, an American aircraft carrier, cuts across the waves. Its deck swarms with jets, its escorts bristle with missiles, and beneath the water, submarines lurk unseen. A U.S. Navy strike group has entered the ancient world. For the Greeks, it would be like gods descending from Olympus. Weapons beyond imagination, machines that defy the natural order, power so absolute it seems untouchable. Yet questions thunder louder than the jets themselves. Can technology alone decide the fate of nations? Can a handful of ships rewrite history against countless armies? Or will the merciless truth of logistics, fuel, supplies, and human endurance bring even these giants to their knees? This is not just a clash of fleets. It is a collision of centuries. The past and future have met, and the world will never be the same. The heart of this impossible vision stands the aircraft carrier, a floating fortress longer than the Parthenon and heavier than any stone. Temple the Greeks could dream of building. Its flight deck teems with aircraft, FA-18 Super Hornets, F-35 stealth fighters, electronic warfare planes, and airborne radar platforms. Each can cover more distance in a single hour than a trireme could in days. From this single ship, the U.S. Navy projects an air force that dwarfs the entire known world. Flanking the carrier are guided missile destroyers, bristling with vertical launch systems packed with Tomahawk cruise missiles and surface-to-air interceptors. Their Aegis combat systems sweep the skies and seas with radar able to detect threats hundreds of miles away, far beyond the line of sight of any Greek scout perched atop a hill. To an ancient eye, these warships would seem alive. Their glowing screens and invisible sensors nothing less than the vision of gods. Below the waves, nuclear submarines glide silently, their presence unknowable until they choose to strike. Armed with torpedoes and ballistic missiles, a single submarine could sink every trireme in the Aegean without ever being seen. To Greek sailors, the sudden destruction of their fleets by an invisible hand would feel like divine wrath. Even supply ships play their part, carrying food, spare parts, and fuel for aircraft. Though fragile compared to their escorts, they represent a lifeline the ancient world cannot comprehend, a moving base of resources ensuring the strike group fights far from home. Communications bind it all together. Satellites and encrypted networks, radios and data links, technologies that allow instant coordination across air, sea, and land. Against the hand signaling and fire beacons of the Greeks, it is not just an advantage, it is another dimension of warfare. To the men of 500 BC, this fleet would not appear human. Its thunderous engines, missiles streaking faster than the eye could follow, and machines that fly without wings of feather or sail, all of it would be beyond the reach of imagination. In raw power, speed, and reach, the U.S. Navy strike group would not merely dominate the ancient world. It would stand as Olympus itself, a pantheon of war descending from the future. For all its power, the U.S. Navy strike group carries a weakness as sharp as any spearhead. It does not belong here. Its engines, weapons, and aircraft are sustained by a lifeline that simply does not exist in 500 BC. The carrier may sail for decades on nuclear power, but its jets are bound by fuel, specialized jet fuel that cannot be brewed from olives, wine, or grain. Every sortie drains the tanks, and with no modern refineries, every flight inches the fleet closer to silence. Ammunition is equally finite. The magazines hold hundreds of missiles, bombs, and torpedoes, an arsenal that could devastate fleets and cities alike. Yet once launched, there is no resupply. Each missile fired is one less chance to shape the outcome. The Navy could shatter armies in days, but every strike burns irreplaceable strength. Against an ancient world with near-infinite manpower, the balance shifts from dominance to desperation. Then comes the human factor. Thousands of sailors need food, clean water, and medical care. Modern rations spoil quickly, desalination systems demand constant upkeep, and advanced machinery breaks under strain. Without replacement parts, every broken jet, every damaged radar, and every sick crew member chips away at the fleet's effectiveness. Morale, too, becomes fragile. What begins as awe-inspiring superiority slowly erodes under the weight of hunger, exhaustion, and the knowledge that help will never come. This is the paradox. Unmatched weapons facing an enemy that cannot hope to match them in firepower, yet can outlast them in time. The strike group's clock ticks louder with every launch, every meal consumed, every system worn down. Technology may dominate the battlefield, but without supply lines, even the gods of war must eventually fall to the limits of survival. On the other side of this impossible encounter stand the warriors of ancient Greece, an age defined not by machines, but by men. The backbone of their power is the trireme, sleek wooden vessels driven by 170 oarsmen, capable of surging across the sea with speed and precision. While fragile before missiles and bombs, in their own world, these ships are the pinnacle of naval design, maneuvering to ram, flank, and outpace rivals. A fleet of hundreds, oar blades flashing in unison, remains a sight that commands both awe and fear. Beyond the seas, the land bristles with hoplites, disciplined infantry locked in phalanx formation, shields overlapping, spears thrusting forward like the teeth of a single beast. Each city-state contributes to this living wall. Athens brings the pride of its navy, Sparta the unyielding will of its warriors, and smaller polis add their strength to the collective defense. Their unity is fragile, but in times of threat, Greek pride and rivalry both ignite a determination to fight. Their greatest weapon is not bronze or wood, but manpower. For every ship sunk or army scattered, new fleets can be built, new armies trained. Fields, forests, and quarries replenish what is lost. Against an enemy with finite missiles and fuel, this ability to rebuild again and again becomes the true counterbalance. Technology may be absent, but endurance is limitless. The Greeks have no radar, no jets, no submarines lurking unseen, but they have numbers, discipline, and the cultural memory of generations raised in war. To them, survival is not a luxury, it is destiny. Against the thunder of modern machines, the Greeks stand armed with something far simpler, yet no less dangerous: the will to endure until the storm burns itself out. The calm waters of the Aegean shatter in an instant. From the deck of the carrier, a formation of Fa-18 Super Hornets roars into the sky, engines screaming like thunder no Greek ear has ever heard. Within minutes, they descend upon a proud fleet of triremes, their oars beating in perfect rhythm. The Greeks expect battle in the old way, ships clashing hull against hull, men hurling spears and arrows. Instead, the heavens open. Precision-guided bombs streak downward, and wooden vessels vanish in blossoms of fire and splinters. From beneath the waves, the unseen predators strike. A nuclear submarine looses its torpedoes, and without warning, triremes explode in geysers of water and shattered timber. To the sailors on nearby decks, it is as if Poseidon himself has risen in wrath, plucking ships into the depths with invisible hands. Panic spreads faster than the flames. Some abandon oars, leaping into the sea. Others row blindly, believing monsters of myth have awakened. On shore, soldiers and citizens watch in disbelief. The distant thunder of jet engines echoes like storms rolling across the sky. Missiles streak faster than arrows, leaving trails of fire before tearing through ships that once ruled these waters. Bronze armor, wooden shields, and decades of naval mastery crumble before a storm no one can fight. Yet amidst the chaos, awe takes root. For the Greeks, this is not merely defeat, it is revelation. Their gods have manifested in steel and fire. The contrast is total. Wooden warships, built by hand and sweat, annihilated by machines that seem to move with divine will. In minutes, fleets that would have terrified rival city-states are reduced to burning wreckage. The Aegean, once a theater of balanced power, becomes a graveyard of shattered timber and desperate survivors. And yet, as devastating as this opening blow is, it marks not the end, but the beginning of a clash that will test the very limits of what power means when one side has eternity. and the other runs on borrowed time. The first clash leaves the Aegean littered with wreckage, but the Greeks are not broken. News spreads across city-states with the speed of runners and fire beacons. Athens rallies its shipwrights, forests fall to axes, and within weeks, new fleets of triremes take to the sea. Sparta sends warriors to man-oars and march along the coasts, while allies across the islands pour every resource into rebuilding. What the Greeks lack in technology, they repay in determination and numbers. Again and again, the Navy's jets scream into the sky, tearing apart wooden fleets with missiles and bombs. Destroyers fire salvos that annihilate ships before they can even glimpse their enemy. Submarines prowl like unseen beasts, claiming vessel after vessel. Every encounter is a slaughter, and yet the waves keep filling with more sails. To the Greeks, each loss is tragedy. But each ship burned only strengthens their resolve to strike back, however hopelessly. The counterattacks grow bolder. Triremes swarm in massive numbers, attempting to encircle destroyers or ram into supply ships. Shorelines bristle with catapults and ballistae, crude but desperate measures to hurl fire and stone at the steel intruders. No single strike lands true, but the message is clear. The Greeks will not yield. Meanwhile, the Navy begins to feel the pressure of time. Missiles that once seemed endless now number in the dozens. Fuel reserves for jets dwindle after each relentless sortie. Every engagement is a victory, but each victory consumes precious resources that cannot be replaced. The carrier deck, once bustling with wave after wave of aircraft, now sees fewer launches as commanders ration fuel. The dominance is absolute, yet fragile. Against men armed with bronze and wood, the strike group is unmatched, but each day that passes tilts the balance. The Greeks can rebuild endlessly from their land and labor. The Navy cannot. What began as a storm of fire and steel has become a race against the clock. With every burning trireme, the Navy edges closer to its own silent collapse. The question is no longer if it can win battles. It is whether it can win them fast enough before its power fades into memory. So the question looms larger than any missile or torpedo. Can the U.S. Navy truly win a war that refuses to end? In the short term, its supremacy is unquestioned. Jets rule the skies, submarines haunt the depths, and destroyers rain fire across the sea. No trireme can stand against a carrier strike group. Every engagement proves the imbalance. Ancient fleets shattered in minutes, soldiers powerless before invisible weapons. Yet wars are not decided in single battles. The Greeks fight with time itself. For every trireme sunk, another can be built. For every army scattered, more men can be trained. Bronze may be primitive, but wood and manpower are limitless resources. Unlike missiles and jet fuel, they do not run out. Here lies the paradox. Overwhelming power that dwindles with every strike. The fleet's magazines grow lighter, its tanks nearer to empty, while the Greeks only grow more determined. In this strange collision of eras, the greatest enemy is not an opposing general or rival fleet. It is the ticking clock of logistics. Supremacy in the present collides with collapse in the future. And so the Navy's triumph may never become true victory. It can dominate, it can terrify, it can devastate. But can it endure a war with no finish line? Against numbers that never stop and a world that endlessly replenishes itself, even gods of war must eventually ask, is overwhelming power enough when time itself is the foe? The first shock is immediate and devastating. Greek fleets that once ruled the seas lie in burning ruin. Survivors whisper of thunder in the skies, of ships that breathe fire, of unseen monsters in the depths. Morale across the city-states falters. Athens, proud of its naval supremacy, reels as its vaunted triremes are reduced to splinters. Sparta, though hardened in war, finds its warriors powerless against enemies they cannot touch. Politicians and generals argue in desperation, unsure whether they face mortal foes or the wrath of gods. Terror grips the Aegean. Alliances tremble. Rivalries dissolve under the sheer weight of fear. Yet even as the strike group dominates the short term, the seeds of a different story are planted. Supplies dwindle, fuel evaporates, ammunition runs low. The fleet, unmatched in its opening strikes, risks becoming a stranded titan, giant in stature but unable to move. The Greeks, patient and tireless, wait for the day when the steel gods run dry. And when that day comes, What remains could be even more dangerous. The wreckage of modern technology falling into ancient hands. Imagine hoplites studying the shattered wing of a jet, philosophers debating the power of combustion, blacksmiths experimenting with steel fragments. Even scraps of radar dishes, broken missiles, or damaged engines could leapfrog Greek knowledge by centuries. The legacy of the Navy might not be its victories, but the sudden surge of innovation sparked by its ruin. A world introduced to explosives, turbines, and hardened steel in the 5th century BCE could rewrite the course of civilization itself. The Greeks, terrified at first, would eventually adapt. Their morale may have broken, their politics shaken, but their hunger for power and survival remains. And so the paradox deepens. The Navy's arrival creates both fear and opportunity. It shatters the present, but might accelerate the future. In trying to dominate a war across millennia, the strike group could unwittingly hand humanity the keys to progress far ahead of schedule. In the end, the lesson is clear. Technology can win battles spectacularly, decisively, almost effortlessly. But wars are not decided by firepower alone. They are decided by endurance, by the strength of supply, by the ability to fight not just today, but tomorrow and the day after. The U.S. Navy strike group would burn like a blazing star in the ancient world, outshining everything around it. Yet even the brightest star fades when fuel runs dry. What this impossible clash reminds us is how fragile human history truly is. The tools of war evolve, but the forces that shape outcomes remain constant: resources, willpower, and time. A handful of machines from the future could terrify and dominate the past, but they too would eventually bend to the eternal truths of survival. So as the steel giants vanish into legend, one question lingers. What would the world look like if the timeline of progress was bent, twisted centuries ahead of schedule? And if you think this was extraordinary, imagine something stranger still. What happens when a Roman legion, forged in iron discipline, charges headlong into the concrete walls and machine guns of a World War II bunker? That's the impossible battle we'll break down next. Thanks for watching.